Have you ever been told your dreams were too big? That what you created wasn't good enough? Imagine turning that rejection into a global empire that transforms not just your life, but the lives of thousands in communities around the world. This is exactly what happened with the most unlikely of culinary heroes, a story that proves how dignity, persistence, and authentic connection can transform street food into a movement that changes lives. By the end of this journey, you'll discover how one chef's refusal to abandon his heritage created a blueprint for success that anyone facing obstacles can follow. The aroma of spices filled the narrow alley as Raj Patel stirred the large pot balanced precariously on two bricks over an open flame. His hands, calloused from years of kitchen work, moved with practiced precision despite the exhaustion shadowing his eyes. This corner in the bustling commercial district had become his workplace after losing his job at a prestigious restaurant chain that had been restructuring their operations. Too ethnic, the regional manager had said when explaining why Raj's suggested menu additions had been rejected. Our customers want familiar foods, not experimental dishes with spices they can't pronounce. Those words echoed in Raj's mind as he arranged his modest street food cart at 5 a.m. The dismissal had come with a severance package, so small it barely covered 2 months of rent. With a family to support and culinary school loans still unpaid, Raj had made a crucial decision. Rather than water down his cooking to fit someone else's idea of acceptable cuisine, he would embrace the flavors of his grandmother's kitchen, the recipes that had never made it onto fancy menus but had nourished generations of his family. What is that smell? A passing businessman wrinkled his nose, barely slowing his hurried pace. Shouldn't there be regulations about cooking on the street like this? Raj smiled politely. It's cardamom and ginger, sir. Would you like to try a sample? First taste is always free. The man shook his head and hurried away, clutching his designer briefcase a little tighter. This was the fourth such interaction that morning, but Raj maintained his dignity. Each rejection was painful, but he reminded himself that his grandmother had faced similar prejudices when she first arrived in this country. Her voice seemed to whisper in his ear, "Our food is our history, our survival. Never apologize for flavors that kept our family alive." By midday, the lunch crowd emerged from surrounding office buildings. Most walked past Raj's cart without a second glance, heading toward familiar fast food chains or trendy salad spots with minimalist logos and maximalist prices. But occasionally, someone would pause, drawn by the unfamiliar yet enticing aromas. Maria Chun, a graphic designer from the advertising agency down the block, became his first regular customer. "I grew up with my mother cooking similar spices," she explained on her third visit. "Everyone in my office asks what I'm eating. The smell drives them crazy when I heat it up in the microwave." Word began to spread, though slowly. Raj learned to time the preparation of his most aromatic dishes for when the office workers took their smoking breaks in the alley. Curiosity often overcame prejudice when hunger combined with tantalizing scents. But making ends meet remained a daily struggle. Some evenings, Raj would return home with less profit than the cost of his ingredients. His wife Priya, working double shifts as a hospital aide, never complained, but the worry lines around her eyes deepened. "Maybe we should consider selling the house," she suggested one night after the children had gone to bed. "We could move to a smaller apartment, just until the business grows." Raj looked around their modest home, the first property they had ever owned, purchased with such pride just 3 years earlier. "Give me 3 more months, he pleaded. "I have an idea that might change everything." The idea had come from an unexpected source. A 10-year-old boy named Damien who had become fascinated with Raj's cooking methods. The child would stand at a distance, watching intently as Raj prepared his specialties. "Why don't you make videos?" Damien had asked one day. "My mom watches cooking videos all the time. She says real chefs should show people how to cook, not just feed them." That night, Raj created his first social media account. Using his phone propped against a water bottle, he recorded himself preparing his grandmother's special chickpea curry, explaining each step with the passion and reverence the dish deserved. He spoke about how these recipes had sustained his family through hardship, about the cultural significance of each ingredient, about food as both sustenance and story. The video quality was poor, the lighting worse. His English, while fluent, carried the melodic cadence of his native tongue. He hesitated before posting it, hearing again the voices of rejection. Too ethnic, too different. Not what people want. But he pressed share anyway. The next morning, his phone buzzed with notifications. The video had been viewed only a few hundred times. Hardly viral by any measure. But the comments were filled with genuine interest and questions about techniques and ingredients. Where is your cart located? I want to try this. My grandmother made something similar, but I never learned how. Thank you for preserving these traditions. Could you show how to properly toast those spices? I always burn mine. That day, 3 new customers appeared at his cart, phones in hand, showing his video. We want exactly what you made in this, they said. A food blogger was among them. Cameron Winters ran a modest but respected website reviewing undiscovered food gems in the city. After tasting Raj's food, he pulled out a professional camera. May I? This deserves proper documentation, he said. 2 days later, Cameron's glowing review went live, describing Raj's cooking as a masterclass in balancing flavors and food with a soul and story. The blog post ended with words that would change everything. In a culinary landscape increasingly dominated by soulless corporate chains and overpriced mediocrity, Raj Patel's humble cart represents something revolutionary. Authenticity unapologetically presented. His grandmother's recipes haven't been focus grouped or market tested. They've been perfected through generations of family meals and cultural preservation. By the end of the week, lines formed at Raj's cart. He sold out of food by early afternoon. Priya took a week's vacation to help him expand production. Their kitchen at home became a prep station each evening, with their children helping to package spice blends and chop vegetables. But success brought new challenges. A health inspector, prompted by complaints from nearby restaurant owners, arrived with a stern expression and clipboard full of regulations. The local Business Improvement Association sent a letter about permit requirements for street vendors. The owner of the alley property threatened to call the police if Raj didn't relocate immediately. Just as momentum was building, the infrastructure of Raj's fledgling business threatened to collapse under the weight of regulations designed to keep people like him from competing with established businesses. At his lowest moment, standing in the rain after being forced to abandon his usual spot, Raj considered giving up. But that afternoon, something unexpected happened that would transform his small street food operation into something much bigger than he had ever imagined. That rain-soaked afternoon, as Raj stood contemplating the fragility of his dreams, a sleek black car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down, revealing a face he recognized from social media. Eliza Wong, a former corporate executive who had left a high-powered position to become a community-focused investor. Her investment firm specialized in backing businesses from underrepresented communities. Are you Raj Patel? She asked. The chef everyone's talking about online? I've been trying to find your cart for days. This chance encounter would become the pivotal moment in Raj's journey, but not in the way most rags-to-riches stories unfold. What Eliza offered wasn't just money. It was a partnership model that would preserve the integrity of Raj's vision while providing the structural support he needed to navigate a system designed to exclude people like him. I don't want to change what you're doing, she explained over steaming cups of chai in a nearby cafe. I want to help you build something sustainable on your own terms. Their conversation lasted hours, digging deep into Raj's vision. Unlike previous investors who had approached him wanting to streamline his menu or modernize his brand, Eliza understood something fundamental. The power of Raj's food lay in its authenticity and the dignity with which he presented his cultural heritage. The regulations that are blocking you now were often created to protect established businesses from newcomers, Eliza explained. But there are paths through them if you have the right guidance. With Eliza's investment came access to a network of resources Raj had never imagined. Legal advisors who specialize in helping immigrant entrepreneurs, marketing professionals who respected cultural authenticity, and most importantly, connections to community leaders who could help Raj establish deeper roots in the neighborhoods he served. Within months, Grandmother's Kitchen, the name Raj chose to honor the source of his recipes, evolved from a street cart to a small storefront in a transitional neighborhood. The location was strategic, positioned between affluent downtown areas and working-class residential communities. This intentional positioning reflected Raj's emerging business philosophy. His food would be accessible to everyone, with a sliding price scale that allowed customers to pay what they could afford. Food shouldn't be a luxury, Raj explained to a local reporter who covered the opening. The recipes I cook sustain my family through the hardest times. They're meant to nourish both the wealthy businessman and the construction worker equally. This progressive pricing model raised eyebrows among traditional business advisors. You'll go bankrupt within 6 months, warned one consultant Eliza had brought in. People will always choose to pay less if you give them the option. But Raj held firm, and something remarkable happened. The transparency about costs and the trust he placed in his customers created a community around the restaurant that transcended typical business relationships. Wealthy patrons often paid extra, understanding they were subsidizing meals for others. Working-class customers, treated with the same respect as high-paying guests, became fiercely loyal advocates. The small restaurant quickly became more than just a place to eat. Raj began hosting cooking classes on Sunday afternoons, teaching not just techniques, but sharing the stories behind each dish. These classes became unexpectedly popular, creating connections across cultural and socioeconomic divides as lawyers and laborers stood side by side, learning to toast cumin seeds properly. Food has always been a great equalizer, Raj would say. At my grandmother's table, everyone was the same height, sitting down. As word spread, larger investors approached with tempting offers to expand rapidly. One venture capital firm proposed opening 20 locations within a year, promising Raj millions in personal wealth. The contract it presented, however, would have given him control over menu decisions and branding. Raj's refusal puzzled them. "Don't you want to be successful?" One investor asked, genuinely confused by Raj's hesitation. "We have different definitions of success," Raj replied simply. "I didn't start this to get rich. I started it to share something meaningful and create something my children could be proud of." Instead of rapid expansion, Raj focused on deepening his impact. He established relationships with local farmers who struggled to compete with industrial agriculture, creating a farm-to-table supply chain that supported small-scale, sustainable growing practices. This decision increases costs but aligned with his values of community support and environmental responsibility. Meanwhile, Raj's social media presence continued to grow organically. Rather than hiring professional production teams, he maintained the authentic, homemade quality of his videos. His teenage daughter Amar became his cinematographer, filming on weekends when she wasn't studying. His son Nikhil, who had inherited his father's culinary instincts, began appearing in videos explaining spice combinations with endearing seriousness. The family-centered approach resonated deeply with viewers tired of glossy, corporate content. When Raj shared a video about his grandmother's handwritten recipe book, water-stained and fragile from decades of kitchen use, it received millions of views and thousands of comments from people sharing similar family treasures. "My abuela had a notebook just like that," wrote one viewer. "When she died, her recipes were the only thing all the grandchildren fought over." By the end of the first year in the storefront location, Grandmother's Kitchen had become profitable enough to hire staff from the local community, prioritizing immigrants and others facing employment barriers. Raj instituted a profit-sharing model and provided health insurance, benefits almost unheard of in the restaurant industry. "If we can't take care of the people who help us succeed, what's the point of success?" he asked when questioned about these decisions cutting into profit margins. This commitment to ethical business practices attracted attention from progressive business publications. A feature in Conscious Commerce magazine highlighted Raj's approach as a new model for socially responsible entrepreneurship. The article caught the eye of Congressman James Rivera, who was developing legislation to support immigrant-owned businesses. Rivera's office reached out to Raj, inviting him to participate in roundtable discussions about barriers facing immigrant entrepreneurs. Suddenly, Raj found himself navigating not just the culinary world, but also the realm of policy advocacy. His testimony about the regulatory hurdles he'd faced resonated with lawmakers who were beginning to recognize how existing structures perpetuated inequality. The same regulations meant to protect consumers often protect established businesses from new competitors, Raj explained during one hearing. When those established businesses are predominantly owned by one demographic group, regulations become barriers to economic mobility for everyone else. This emerging role as an advocate brought new dimensions to Raj's work. Community organizations began approaching him about partnering on food security initiatives. A local high school requested his participation in a mentorship program for students interested in culinary careers. Through it all, Raj maintained his focus on the core values that guided him from the beginning, honoring his cultural heritage, treating food as both nourishment and connection, and building community through shared meals. When a second location became possible, Raj made an unconventional choice. Rather than opening in an affluent area where profits would be highest, he chose a food desert, a neighborhood without access to fresh, healthy food options. The new Grandmother's Kitchen included not just a restaurant, but also a small market selling affordable ingredients and a community kitchen where residents could learn cooking skills. Food justice isn't just about who can eat at restaurants. Raj explained at the opening. It's about who has the knowledge, tools, and ingredients to feed themselves and their families with dignity. This holistic approach to expansion reflected a growing understanding of his business as a vehicle for community transformation rather than just personal wealth creation. When a third location opened 6 months later, it incorporated a training program for formerly incarcerated individuals seeking employment in the culinary industry. By the end of the second year, Grandmother's Kitchen had evolved from a single restaurant into a multifaceted social enterprise. Each location maintained the core elements that had made the original successful: authentic recipes, ethical sourcing, community engagement, and accessible pricing, while adapting to meet the specific needs of its neighborhood. As Raj's profile rose, the same restaurant chain that had once fired him for his too ethnic menu suggestions approached with an offer to buy his brand for a staggering sum. The irony wasn't lost on him, nor was the vindication of seeing his once-rejected culinary vision now valued in the millions. Their representatives arrived in expensive suits, armed with market research showing how ethnic cuisine was trending upward. Consumers are more adventurous now, they explained. Your authentic approach fits perfectly with current market demands. Raj listened politely to their presentation, then asked a simple question that left them momentarily speechless. What happens to my staff? To the communities we serve? To the farmers who depend on our business? The corporate representatives exchanged glances before one replied. Those would be operational decisions made post-acquisition, but I can assure you we would maintain the essence of your brand. Raj declined their offer with the same dignity with which he had weathered the rejection years earlier. His decision shocked not only the corporate representatives, but also some of his advisors who saw the buyout as the ultimate success story. Sometimes walking away from money is the richest choice you can make. Raj told Eliza later that evening. Some things aren't for sale. This principled stand marked the beginning of the next phase in Raj's journey, one that would see Grandmother's Kitchen grow not just as a business, but as a movement, challenging fundamental assumptions about the purpose of commerce and the meaning of prosperity. The sun had barely risen over the community garden when Raj arrived, still clinging to the rows of herbs and vegetables. 5 years had passed since he declined the corporate buyout, and in that time, Grandmother's Kitchen had evolved into something far more profound than a restaurant chain. This garden, one of 17 now flourishing and formerly vacant lots across the city, represented the expansion of his vision beyond food service into systemic change. Morning chef, called Jamal, a 23-year-old who had joined Raj's team 3 years earlier through the Second Chance Employment Program. Once unable to secure work due to a criminal record from his teenage years, Jamal now managed the agricultural training program, teaching urban farming techniques to youth from underserved communities. The coriander is coming in beautifully, Raj observed, crouching to examine the fragrant leaves. Remember when people said nothing would grow in this soil? Jamal laughed. Same people who said kids like me wouldn't amount to anything. Guess they were wrong about both. This transformation of land, of lives, of entire communities had become the hallmark of what was now called the Grandmother's Kitchen movement. What began as a simple street food car had expanded to 37 locations across the country, each operating not as a franchise in the traditional sense, but as a community-owned cooperative using Raj's model and mentorship. The expansion had happened organically, growing from connections rather than capital. When Luis Mendoza, a line cook at the second location, expressed interest in bringing the concept to his predominantly Latino neighborhood, Raj didn't sell him a franchise license. Instead, he developed a knowledge-sharing system where Luis could establish his own version of Grandmother's Kitchen, adapted to honor his Mexican culinary heritage while maintaining the core principles of community ownership, ethical sourcing, and accessible pricing. We're not building identical restaurants, Raj explained to a business school class that had invited him as a guest speaker. We're sharing a framework for food justice that each community can adapt to its own cultural context and needs. This approach challenged conventional business wisdom about brand consistency and centralized control. But the results spoke for themselves. Each location maintained profitability while serving as a catalyst for neighborhood revitalization and economic opportunity. The model had drawn attention from unexpected quarters. Economists study what they call the Patel paradigm, examining how this collaborative rather than competitive approach created resilient local economies. Urban planners noted how neighborhoods with a grandmother's kitchen saw decreases in food insecurity and increases in community engagement. Public health researchers documented improved nutrition outcomes in areas previously classified as food deserts. "You've created something revolutionary without calling a revolution," remarked Dr. Eleanor Chun, the founder of the Institute for Community Economics, during a panel discussion with Raj. By embedding economic justice within a familiar cultural experience, sharing food, you made structural change accessible and non-threatening. Raj's response reflected the wisdom that had guided him from the beginning. Revolution doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simmers slowly, like a good curry, changing everything gradually but completely. The metaphor was apartment. What had begun as one man's refusal to compromise his cultural identity had simmered into a movement that was gradually transforming the landscape of American business, food systems, and community development. Central to this transformation was a grandmother's kitchen approach to financing and ownership. Rather than seeking traditional investors who demanded maximum returns, each new location was funded through a combination of community investment cooperatives, zero-interest loans from an innovative revolving fund Raj had established, and sweat equity from the local team who would operate the business. This structure ensured that profits remained within the communities being served rather than flowing to distant shareholders. It also protected the business from the pressure to compromise its values for short-term financial gains. "What we're building isn't just a restaurant group," Priya explained to a journalist profiling the business. Once a hospital aide working double shifts to support Raj's dream, she now headed the organization's community development programs. It's an alternative economic model that proves you can honor culture, care for people, and still create prosperity. The success of this model had drawn scrutiny as well as praise. Industry analysts questioned its scalability. Traditionalists in the business world dismissed it as feel-good economics that couldn't work in the real world. Some competitors even claimed the community center approach was merely clever marketing, concealing conventional profit motives. These criticisms intensified when financial publications began reporting on the collective valuation of the grandmother's kitchen ecosystem, estimating it worth at over $500 million when accounting for all affiliated businesses, properties, and community assets. "If it's worth that much, why aren't you living in a mansion?" asked one particularly direct business reporter during an interview at Raj's modest home, the same house he had almost sold during his early struggles. Raj smiled, gesturing toward the family photos covering the walls. "Because wealth isn't just what you own. It's what you build that outlasts you." This philosophy was evident in the organization's approach to growth. Rather than maximizing revenue through rapid expansion, Raj and his team had developed rigorous criteria for new locations, prioritizing communities where a grandmother's kitchen could address specific needs like food insecurity, unemployment, or lack of community gathering spaces. Each new location began not with market research, but with months of community listening sessions, building relationships with neighborhood leaders, and understanding the specific culinary traditions of the area. This approach meant slower growth but deeper impact, creating businesses that were truly anchored in their communities. The journey hadn't been without challenges. As the model gained recognition, opportunistic imitators emerged, corporate chains launching authentic ethnic concepts with aesthetic nods to community, but none of the structural commitments to justice. Some even appropriated elements of Raj's story in their marketing while maintaining exploitative labor practices. Rather than responding with anger or litigation, Raj saw these imitations as an opportunity to clarify the true values behind his work. Grandmother's Kitchen published its entire business model as an open-source framework, including financial structures, hiring practices, and supplier relationships. This radical transparency invited others to truly adopt their approach rather than merely mimicking its appearance. We're not protecting a competitive advantage, Raj explained. We're trying to change how business is done. If others want to genuinely follow this path, we should help them, not hinder them. This openness extended to the culinary side as well. Unlike most restaurants that closely guard their recipes as intellectual property, Grandmother's Kitchen regularly published cookbooks, sharing not just recipes, but the stories and cultural context behind them. These books, with titles like Recipes of Resistance and Cooking Through Borders, became unexpected bestsellers, with all proceeds funding culinary scholarships for students from marginalized communities. On a warm spring evening, 10 years after Raj had first set up his street cart, a celebration gathered in the courtyard of the original Grandmother's Kitchen location. The event marked not just a business anniversary, but the graduation of the 100th cohort from the culinary training program that had become a cornerstone of the organization's work. Among the graduates was Damien, now 20, the young boy who had first suggested Raj make cooking videos. After years of mentorship in the youth program, he was heading to culinary school with a full scholarship from the foundation Raj and Priya had established. Chef Raj taught me that cooking isn't just about food, Damien told the assembled crowd. It's about preserving history, creating community, and making change happen one meal at a time. As Raj listened to these words, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a desperate street vendor facing daily rejection to the leader of a movement that had transformed thousands of lives, including his own. The path had never been about accumulating wealth or power, but about honoring the wisdom of his grandmother, who had taught him that food prepared with love and integrity could sustain not just bodies but spirits and communities. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Raj with tears in her eyes. "My family came to this country 3 years ago," she said. "Everyone told us to forget our culture if we wanted to succeed. But seeing you build all this while staying true to your heritage gave us permission to do the same." These moments, more than evaluation figures or business awards, were what Raj considered the true measure of his success. Each person who found dignity in their cultural identity, each community that reclaimed control of its food systems, each conversation that bridged divides across tables shared with strangers, these are the returns on investment that mattered most. As the evening wound down, Raj stood in the garden behind the restaurant, watching fireflies dance above the herbs his grandmother would have recognized. Eliza Wong, the investor who had believed in him from the beginning, joined him there. "Did you ever imagine it would grow like this?" she asked. Raj considered the question seriously. "Not in form, perhaps, but in essence, yes. My grandmother always said that food made with integrity has a power that can't be contained. It creates its own path. Some business analysts are still trying to figure out your secret," Eliza remarked. "They can't understand how you built something so valuable while breaking so many conventional rules." "That's because they're measuring the wrong things," Raj replied. "They count money, but not meaning. They track growth, but not depth. They measure individual success, but not collective transformation." As stars appeared overhead, Raj thought about the journey ahead. The movement was still evolving, with new challenges and opportunities emerging daily. There were plans for a Sustainable Agriculture Institute, a policy advocacy arm focused on food system reform, and partnerships with indigenous communities to support food sovereignty initiatives. "We're still just beginning," he told Eliza. "The real work is ensuring that what we've built can thrive without us, that it belongs to the communities it serves rather than to any individual." This vision of business as a vehicle for collective liberation rather than individual enrichment represented the true revolution Raj had sparked. In a world where success was typically measured in personal wealth and power, he had demonstrated a different possibility: prosperity that lifted communities, honored heritage, and healed the divides between people. As the gathering dispersed and families headed home carrying containers of food prepared by the graduating students, Raj thought about the street cart where it all began, now preserved in a small museum space adjacent to the restaurant. from that humble beginning had grown not just a business empire, but a movement that was redefining the very purpose of commerce. They mocked the food of our ancestors. Raj often reminded his team. But our ancestors knew something profound about nourishment that went beyond mere sustenance. They understood that how we feed each other defines who we are as a community. In honoring that wisdom, Raj Patel had created something that no amount of money could value, a legacy of dignity, belonging, and transformation that would continue to nourish communities long after the financial measurements of success had been forgotten.